Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Blake Anthony Johnson, who serves as president and CEO of the famed Chicago Sinfonietta. Blake Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me on again.
And I would be so remiss if I did not share, of course, I have had the true honor to be able to know so much of your work over the years. You're one of the leading alums of Sphinx's LEAD program, and just so many different connections, and your impact on our field, in addition to your role with Sinfonietta, has just truly been extraordinary. So just thank you for all of the leadership that you bring. It really is great to have you on the show.
We had a few good examples. I think it rhymes with Aaron, Aaron Dworkin, somewhere in that world.
Exactly. And so there's so many exciting things I want to ask you about. First and foremost, just for anyone in our audience who may not be, fully know the scope and work of Chicago Sinfonietta, could you kind of just give us the quick overview so that our audience really has an understanding of the scope of the work that you do?
Of course, I'll reduce my 12-minute spiel to 12 seconds in the sense that we, Chicago Sinfonietta, kind of have a dual role. Here in Chicago, we are Chicago-based, but we have programs nationally, and we are essentially focused on getting folks in the room who otherwise wouldn't be there. And so that comes out in many different aspects, whether it be fellowships or music education programs or commissions or, new type of kind of crazy technology driven innovative programming. But in short, it's essentially who's not in the room that would benefit from music and the arts. And so the social determinants of health is a really big one that we try to hit all of those in terms of what can music be outside of just entertainment. So it's a fun ride.
It is truly awesome and amazing work. You're an extraordinary leader. I believe first African-American to lead a renowned orchestra, and obviously an orchestra of national renown. And I think the youngest when you were appointed at 29. So obviously all of these amazing honors. And unless I'm wrong, there's also an additional recent honor that you also have been awarded, if you might be able to share on the show.
Yeah, Chicago has been an amazing city, and we tell everyone, I say we because I consider myself a Chicagoan now, that, the city will give you what you give back to it, or it'll give back to you what you give. And so I was recently the Daniel Burnham Fellow, the Chicago Community Trust Daniel Burnham Fellow, and then just recently was named the Cranes 40 Under 40 as a heavyweight businessman, whatever that means. And so I really appreciate the support from the city, because we really are unique in having civic, but government and business sectors working together constantly. And so to kind of get that exposure, they give a lot to me as an arts guy, which I appreciate, that they keep us at the table in all things regarding the city.
Which is, again, an example of your leadership. And I think that because so many in our audience are in leadership roles at their organization, and this ability you have to collaborate and through that deliver not just for Sinfonietta, but for the city and for your audiences. And I think that really takes us to a key thing that I wanted to ask you about in terms of major recent news that relates to collaboration and also a new home for Sinfonietta. So can you kind of share what's been happening?
For sure. I think everyone has probably heard and read about our Pay What You Can program, which has gotten a lot of attention. And a natural extension of that is really, what does that look like in the physical space itself? And so I have talked about kind of often that concert halls are not always set up to be the most welcoming. And so we are really, really proud to be the new resident partner and an anchor tenant for the Auditorium Theater. It is actually one of the most important theaters that we have in the country, in the sense that it was actually created by civil leaders who wanted the arts to be accessible. At the time, it was opera that was really inaccessible when they originally built the hall. But, you know, we talk about the hierarchy and seating that does not exist in this hall. It's actually quite democratic in the layout. And it just has this amazing history in Chicago of really being kind of that first way of entry to the arts. And so for Chicago Sinfonietta to be the resident tenant and to really kind of put life back into this is a beautiful space is really exciting. And so you can imagine the next few years and seasons, we're going to be playing around with the space and playing around with that identity. It's a huge, huge honor, but also a fun challenge to come up with new innovative ways to really make our mark in the city.
It's so exciting. And of course, major congratulations. And what I was wondering, because I think a lot in our audience will be like, oh, okay, so that's amazing. And then especially their administrative side is going, all right, now how did he do that? Right? How did he bring that about? So while obviously we don't have enough time here to get into those details, and some people may reach out to you directly, but could you kind of just share any of the key steps, you know, as a leader, as an administrative leader, that you were able to accomplish to be able to help make this happen? Such a massive milestone for the ensemble and for the organization.
Two main things, but they fall under the umbrella of listening. So, you know, everyone, I think anyone who takes on an organization has their own dreams. I was jogging around the city and it was raining and I had music blaring in my ears and I got lost. And suddenly I was right in front of the Civic Opera building and I thought, oh, this would be so cool if Sinfonietta had this as well. And so I really just figured, you know, the best way to figure out how we'll find our new home is figuring out what the community wants. And so I spent a year and a half going to we have 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. So I went to 90 sites, believe it or not, with our Metropolitan Planning Council, with city government, with Cook County government, with a lot of just local kind of community leaders who really understand the neighborhood by street and really trying to figure out before we, you know, kind of plant ourselves somewhere, what does the community want? So for us, I realized that we would probably have more than one home, one downtown and then one elsewhere. But then also we realized we needed to stay nimble because the city is so large. And so I think listening and really just understanding what people want from us rather than me prescribing it has been the biggest win, because quite frankly, I never would have imagined that we would have stayed in such a concentrated area of just amazing art, but it allows us to have tentacles in other places. So the listening part, I really can't stress that enough. That has what has guided me through the process.
I love that approach, and I think it's so important, and it is being talked about more, but I think probably not practiced enough, you know, and all too often, especially just in the orchestral world, it's kind of like, we've got this great music, community, here you go, and just why aren't you coming to our hall, you know? And that idea of actually listening and better understanding and truly engaging, not just calling it community engagement, say, but actually engaging with and learning and listening about one's community. It's so incredibly empowering. Well, this is just tremendous new steps and such a wonderful expansion and evolution for Chicago Sinfonietta. I know we're running short on time, but I always like to ask my guests, and I can only imagine that while there's this amazing partnerships and conversations and listening that took place, there had to have been some tough days in this process, and potentially even days where you thought it wasn't going to happen. And curious, as a leader, how did you, what did you do to go about either finding strength, new insights, solutions? What do you do as a leader individually? And I know in addition to your jogging, which I know that you do and definitely gives you strength.
It's funny, I did go for a run this morning, but we just recently hosted the US Chamber of Commerce, and they're like, what is the arts guy doing here? And I have thought about this quite a bit, this Jesse Norman quote, pigeonholes are most comfortable for pigeons. And I think us as creatives who work in creative institutions, we can be so much more than what people may know, or even what we may know. And so where I've actually found a lot of kind of energy, but also momentum is really finding, okay, yeah, this is what we do, but what else do we do? What else do we touch? Like whether it be physical or internal of, what is those implicit and explicit duties that we have as public servants? And I found that it has brought so much more joy and actually understanding to the arts in general, because it really is more than entertainment. It is such an essential part of humanity, and not pigeonholing ourselves in this entertainment space, but really as a real commitment to community and bettering people and having artful lives has been a huge, huge, huge energizer and pushing some of these tougher days through.
Blake Anthony Johnson, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything you do, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Aaron.